Bechoros Daf Gimel. Yesterday we learned the halacha that if you sell a large animal to a guy which is asur, you have to redeem it back. Says Rish Lakish in one version up to 10 times its value, in another version up to 100 times its value. The Gemara wonders, is that an exaggeration or he really means even 100 times the amount? Same thing we have by a slave. If you sell a slave to a guy, you must redeem it back, according to Reb Shimon Levi, up to 10 times, and in another version of Reb Shimon Levi, up to 100 times the value. Says the Gemara, I can prove to you that it's exact. It's not an exaggeration. Because if you take the one lashon by a slave and say you have to redeem it up to 100 times, and the one lashon by an animal that you redeem it up to 10 times, why the difference in the amount? Why is a slave much more than an animal? So you see that it's exact. Says the Gemara, no. Perhaps by a slave, there's reason to give him such a large fine because he took a human being and he's preventing him from doing mitzvahs. So you have to fine him very heavily. Says the Gemara, perhaps I can bring a raya. That's not exact. We reverse the versions and we'll say, look, by a slave, you only have to pay 10 times the amount, and by an animal, 100 times. Where's the logic? By a slave, you're preventing him from doing mitzvahs. It should be much more than 10 times. Says the Gemara, no. On that, I could also say it makes sense because we have a concept called milsa. If something is not very common, there's no reason to enact fines. So therefore, by a slave, there's no reason to give a big fine. Nobody really sells slaves to goyim. But animals, is very common to sell animals to goy, and therefore we enacted a very large fine. And then the Gemara says a very interesting thing. Perhaps you'll say that the reason why by a slave it's only 10 times the amount, and by an animal it's 100 times, is because by a slave you don't benefit from redeeming him. Because once you redeem him, he goes out and becomes a regular Jew. You don't get to use him anymore. But by an animal, you get to use him. Says the Gemara, if that was the case, they should only enact a fine of 11 times the amount. 10 like the slave, and one more for the value of the animal that you benefit from. But why would you give him 89 times more a fine than the slave? The Gemara says, what is the source of the machlokes between Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda that we mentioned yesterday? According to Chachamim, if the guy owns a small percentage of the animal, you are patur completely from Bechorah, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, whatever the Jew owns in the animal, that's how much the Jew must redeem. What's the source of the machlokes? It's the exact word. The question is how to darshan the word. In one shot in the Gemara is the machlokes is how to darshan the word bechar, and the other shot in the Gemara is how to darshan the word kol. So in the first version of the Gemara, bechar means even if you own some of the animal, and then comes according to Chacham the word kol and says you have to own the entire animal in order to be chayiv in bechar. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, bechar means the entire animal. And the word kol comes to say even if you own a part of it, kol shuhu, then you're chayiv in bechara. Or the machlokes says how to learn the word kol. That according to everybody, the word bechar means most of the bechar. And then the word kol, according to Chacham, comes to say that you must own the entire animal. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, the word kol comes to lessen and say all you need is part of the animal, and that's it. There's a story the Gemara says an actual case happened where a woman became a geyeris and her brothers were goyim, and they gave her animals b'kablanas to work the animals and split the profits of the offspring. And Rava paskined like Chachamim that if there's any part owned by a goy, it absolves you completely from the chiyuv of bechara. Now, what part of the animal must the goy own in order for it not to be considered the Jews completely? Rav Huna says the smallest amount, even the ear of the animal. And in fact, the Gemara brings Rabbi Yochanan later on that says the same thing. And la halacha we paskin that even if the guy owns the ear, there's a p'tur from b'chayra. Just Rav Nachman had a question. Why doesn't the kohen tell the owner, take this ear, give it to the guy, and I want the rest of the animal for myself? Rav Chizda holds it must be a vital organ that if you remove the organ, the animal will die, such as the trachea. Because Rav Chizda holds that a treifa can live. Treifa chaya. So if it was a part of the animal, let's say the hind leg, which if you remove it, it's considered a treifa. So if the guy owned it, the animal still lives, you'd be chayiv in a bechayra. But according to Rava, treifa ain't a chayiv. So it can mean even the hind leg. It doesn't have to be the trachea. It doesn't have to be a vital organ, because every organ, every limb is vital, because eventually the animal will die if it doesn't have it. The Gemara just asks the question. If you say that a vital organ such as the trachea owned by a guy absolves you from chayra, why? Because the animal will die. What if the animal is dead? We say that a stillborn is considered a b'char. Why is that any different than if the animal will die from one aver. Why is it stillborn? We darshan sheger rechem, and the Gemara takes out the segel, puts in the comments shegar, that it lives within the animal. You have to treat a stillborn with the kedusha of bechar. You have to bury it. Says the Gemara very nicely. If the guy owns a part of the animal, a vital organ, then there's chulin inside the bechar, so it's no longer 100% the bechar. But this neifel, the stillborn, is 100% the Jews. Yes, it's dead, but the kedusha is still there. Rav Papa says a big chiddush. Just like we say by the fetus that it has to be completely the Jews, because it says kol bechar b'Yisrael, the mother also has to be completely Jewish. And if the mother has a partnership of a guy in it, even a small partnership, it absolves the fetus from bechara, because it says kol miknecha. Kol miknecha would mean that it has to be 100% a Jewish animal, and they can't have any shutavs of a guy. Says the Gemara, there's three categories in mumim. There's a mum that the animal looks like an animal that has nothing to do with a bechar, such as if its mouth looks like that of a pig. Pig is not in the parish of bechar. If the eye is as small as that of a goose is not in the parish of bechar. That's a mum, patters you from bechar. If the animal has a very large eye, the size of a calf is in the parish of bechar. So over here we come out to another, perhaps you could say it's a mum called sarua. If you have two limbs that are not equal size, they're supposed to be the same size, such as eyes, one is large and one is small, that's sarua, that could be a mum which would pater for bechar. And then Rabbi Yochanan comes along and says, I have a case where it's in the parish of bechar and it looks like a bechar, it's still a mum. That is, if a sheep gave birth to something that looks like a goat, or vice versa, a goat gave birth to something that looks like a sheep, just its wool looks different, that's a mum. But if it has other simanim of the original animal, of the let's say sheep gave birth to something that looks like a goat, but it still has simanim of a sheep, it's considered a bechar, just you can't bring it on the mizbeach if to give it to the kohen. Now, by a human being, if he has very small eyes or very large eyes, that's a mum for a kohen, he can't perform that avodah. But by an animal, I could say the reason why he has very large eyes is because he's very strong, and the reason why he has small eyes is very weak. But if one is small, one is large, that's a mum, not necessarily sarua. The Gemara brings the story of Reb Mori bar Rachel. He was very makbid in bechara, so what he did was, in utero, he took the fetus and he sold it to, he didn't take it out, but he sold the fetus to a guy before it was born. And after it was born, he still treated it with the kedusha of bechar, and he gave it to a kohen, everything great. Yet you think he's doing a great thing, yet the Gemara says he was punished and all his animals died. The question is why? And the answer is because he removed the kedusha of bechara from these animals. What he should have done is similar to what Rav Yehuda did, and that is that when the fetus was still in the stomach, he put a mum in the animal. It remained Chadish b'kedushas b'chayra, but you couldn't be makriv it. Another pshat, says the Gemara, is that Rav Mori knew how to make a kinyan between a Jew and a goy, and that is with money. Just the observers might not have understood what's going on here, and they would make a mistake, and that's why he was punished. Have a wonderful day. Chag kosher v'sameach.